like listening to him. I feel like he's in command and control. He gets these things. He's also pretty smart about how he says things politically. May not be ready to shake the markets and say we're going to do this pretty steadfast with all of these rate hikes coming through. I didn't get the sense listening to him that they are going to go that much slower. To me, kind of reading through and listening to hours of that testimony yesterday, it sounded to me like, he knows that this is an issue. He knows that they need to be moving on this, and he's not going to say anything to shake the markets up right now. But that was just my interpretation. How about yours?
Well, certainly we saw when the 2-year rate went up 18 basis points, when he opened up the fact that we're going to have to go faster, I think that the market said that. But we also have to admit, Becky, that the Fed has been terribly wrong over the last year. I mean, all this temporary inflation. Look at their projections for inflation that they did last year, so way below what actually happened all the way to December. And listen, Jay Powell's a very, very good man. He's a good communicator, but the Fed has been very wrong, and they're going to have to catch up, and they have to and really have to admit, we got to bite the bullet here. We got to defend the dollar here. We talk about Bitcoin taking over. We got to defend it. We got to defend the dollar.
Take two. Happy Bitcoin Tuesday, freaks. It's your boy Odell here for Citadel Dispatch 58. Citadel Dispatch is an interactive live show about Bitcoin distributed systems, privacy, and open source software. As always, I'd like to thank all the freaks who continue to support this show. Dispatch is 100% audience funded without ads or sponsors, purely focused on actionable Bitcoin discussion. Easiest way to support the show is through Podcasting 2.0 apps. My two favorite are Breeze Wallet and Fountain Podcasts. They work like traditional podcast apps, except you load them up with sats. So you load them up with sats, search Citadel Dispatch, click the subscribe button. Then you basically pick how many sats per minute you think Dispatch is worth. And then as you're listening, it automatically will stream sats directly to my node. You can also support the show using my BIP47 paynym, which is Odell. That's linked at citadeldispatch.com, as well as my BTC Pay instance that allows you to support the show via on-chain or Lightning, all Bitcoin. Dispatch is broadcast on Twitch, Twitter, and BitcoinTV.com. All archives are at bitcointv.com after the fact. The Twitch is twitch.tv/Citadel Dispatch. I am no longer broadcasting through YouTube because they can go fuck themselves. So with all that said, this is a conversation that I'm looking forward to greatly. It might not be with necessarily the most well-known names, but they've all become friends over time. I like to think that they're freaks and they listen to the show as well. And they just have a lot of very interesting opinions, and they do a lot of work in terms of education and building in the space. So I'm very excited for this conversation. I think we're going to have, it's going to be unique. It's going to be maybe a little bit disjointed, maybe a little bit organic in proper Dispatch fashion. But it's going to be a fun one, and hopefully you guys find it enjoyable and helpful. So with all that said, our first guest is Guerra Moneta. Guerra, what's up?
Hey, man. How's it going? Thanks for having me on.
How's it going, Guerra? And we have Brother Rabbit. What's up, Brother Rabbit?
Hey, man. How's it going? Good to be here.
Cheers. And we have Rod and Wheel. What's up, Rod and Wheel?
Happy to be here. Thank you.
Fuck yes. So Brother Rabbit and Guerra Moneta are involved in the Ronin Dojo project, the Ronin Dojo full known project. They recently came out with a pre-built version of their node. It's free open source software, so you can actually run it all yourself on your own hardware. But they also now have a pre-built version. I have it right behind me. You can't see that because this is not a camera-enabled show, but it is there. So I figure we'll start the conversation with that, and then we'll see kind of where it takes us. So with all that said, Guerra or Brother Rabbit, you want to start off with why someone should be interested in the Ronin Dojo project in the first place?
Yeah, I'll jump in, and also got to do the obligatory opening the beer.
Let's fucking go.
Yeah,
Everyone's
so
drinking today.
awesome. So for anyone who hasn't heard of Ronin Dojo project, like Matt was saying, we are a privacy-focused Bitcoin full node implementation, and we're trying to make running a Bitcoin full node that enables your privacy as easy as possible. We're hoping that we could get all the way to a plug-and-play experience that's smooth, where anyone can run a node. But that's not all we're focused on. We're a hardware and software company, so we're constantly building new software. We have new hardware products that are coming, like steel backup plates, and we're going to offer services like premium support to help people on the long journey to learning about privacy. So really, in short, Ronin Dojo as a company is your one-stop shop for Bitcoin privacy and getting started using Bitcoin like it's cash.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, my package had the metal backups in it as well. Is that normal, or
That was
did
part
I
of
get
the
special treatment?
holiday bundle that we did. If you ordered before a certain date, each node came with a plate.
It's pretty clever, the whole like sticker thing on the metal plate. I wasn't really sold on it at first, but I kind of dig it now.
Yeah, and I think we'll offer a few different options. Self-custody is super important along with privacy. So whether you want to use like a sticker you can peel off and be a little more secret, or if you want to use like an engraved one where those lines are, acid etched. Really, it's just about, what are you comfortable with? What's your threat model? Is somebody going to find that plate or not? And you can kind of, adjust your strategy accordingly.
Yeah, I mean, so let's just talk about that real quick. Most Bitcoin wallets have a seed backup. Your secret words, they're either 12 or 24 words. You should never put that on a online computer. You shouldn't save that in your Apple Notes. You shouldn't save that in your Google Drive. You should keep it offline. That means you could either write it on a piece of paper, but paper obviously can get damaged by water or fire. So what a lot of people do is they will stamp it into steel. Most steel backups, as Guerra said, have these like laser etched lines indicating, which word you are engraving. With Ronin Dojo's backup, it's just a blank piece of steel. So when you're done with it, and you put like this sticker on top of it that has the guidelines. So then you use you use this like hole punch to punch the dots in the steel. And when you remove the sticker, it just looks like a piece of steel with like braille in it or something. I guess some people might still know what they're looking for there, but it just adds like another level of plausible deniability if someone just like comes across it. But regardless, you should keep it physically secure where like no one can get to it, at least easily. But that is kind of like a secondary thing. I mean, the main thing here is the node, and I know you guys have been working really hard on it. What makes this node different? What makes this, there's a bunch of people have a bunch of different options. I had a Citadel Dispatch where we had a bunch of different node teams on, 24/7 node teams. Like Woe and Zelko from your team were there representing Ronin Dojo. So if people want like if people want to see like a comparison between the other projects, they can go and check out that episode. But
But
In
yeah,
your
what
words,
makes us
what makes it
different?
unique? Yeah.
Yeah, so we have a strong focus on Samurai Wallet, of course. So, I can go ahead and say if you want Bitcoin privacy and you want to use Samurai Wallet, we're the best node project in the space for it as far as uptime goes, as far as stability, as far as customer support. Most of the other nodes really are just stuffing a lot of apps in there and having stability issues. And, if you want help with Samurai Wallet, there's no one around to help you out, or some of them haven't even written guides or wikis on how to do it either. So just starting there as a Samurai user, it's a very advantageous setup. On top of that, we have a Whirlpool built in. It's deployed right whenever you set up the node. So you can mix 24/7. You don't need to keep your Samurai app open to do Whirlpool. You can remotely access it anywhere in the world over Tor. We don't, cop out and have any kind of any security holes, anything that could be considered insecure, like leaving the firewall open, like leaving the SSH port open. We don't let you access it in ways that could damage your privacy. Every single step, your privacy is taken into account. And everywhere we can, we, run things through Tor. Even if Tor is a little bit slower, sometimes it's the best option if you're remote. On top of that, we have really high quality hardware. I believe we're one of the only nodes using M.2 and VME drives. We got great customer support as far as hardware goes. We'll mail you out a replacement if there's an issue. Usually we can have stuff arrive within 2 to 3 days in the States. And yeah, that's a good starting point. Brother Rabbit, you got any more?
Yeah, I was going to say that, abstracting sort of all the technicals away, you mentioned about sort of closing ports to SSH and whatnot. I think it's worth sort of mentioning that this is all by default, isn't it? So those that would have received a Tanto, the lucky ones that were in the US, so the idea behind the Tanto is sort of a plug and play node. So those to date that are familiar with Ronin Dojo will be familiar with flashing like a micro SD card, getting their hardware, ordering their hardware off the internet, flashing the micro SD, and then having to go straight into the command line and initiate the Manjaro setup. So with the Tanto in particular, the idea about being a plug and play node is that it arrives in the post, and you simply just plug it into the Ethernet cable, plug an Ethernet cable into it, and a power supply, and within 10 minutes, the lights on the node should turn on, and the initialization sequence starts. And you're up and running within a matter of minutes. Now, for those that are a little bit more sort of privacy conscious aware, or like to verify the images themselves, you don't have to. The node does come with a pre-flashed micro SD card, but if you want, you can open up the bottom after receiving it and flash the image yourself, verifying it first, of course. And then plugging in the power supply and Ethernet cable. So yeah, like I said, within about 10 minutes, you can go to your local browser, of which Pavel, who I think you've had on. Have you had Pavel on Dispatch before?
I have not had Pavel on yet.
Oh well, he's a UI whiz, that's for sure. And he's
the UI is fucking gorgeous.
His magic. It's nice, isn't it? So within a matter of minutes, you can get into your UI and you've got a dashboard that says, what the IBD is on, where the indexer is at, and then you can pair your Samurai wallet. So it's just sort of trying to get to a place where running a node is a lot easier for the user, because if you're these things can be a bit technical for those that are told that they should run a node, but don't quite understand or feel like they've got the ability to do so.
Yeah, that's perfect. And to expand on that, I just shared a tweet in the chat. I'll share it again. It's all about, just shared it right there. It's all about making this easier. Like in that tweet, I listed 5 steps, and really it should be that simple. You should be able to flash the phone or buy a phone that has Calyx on it. You should be able to plug the node in and it's set up. Just download the wallet, engrave your piece of steel, and you're a go. You know, you got the Freedom phone, you've got the Freedom money, you're connected to your own node. And it really should be that simple to get off of zero and get started and, you know, be set up within a day or two.
So, like a couple things to note here. First of all, why would someone use their own node? To use the Bitcoin network, you connect to the Bitcoin network through a node. If you don't use your own node, you're using someone else's node. You're trusting that person or entity that's running the node with your privacy and with verification. If that node provider is pressured or compromised, data on you and your Bitcoin transactions can also be compromised. So it's important to use your own node. You guys make it extremely easy in that respect. It's as simple as you just plug this thing in, you wait for it to sync, and then a QR code shows on the web browser screen, and you just scan that QR code with Samurai Wallet, and it automatically connects to your own node through Tor. So I really think that QR code connection mechanism is vastly underrated. It's a fantastic way of simplifying the UX in terms of using your own node. And then the other thing you guys didn't mention is, I mean, the Tanto or the Tonto, like the actual hardware case is fucking fire. Or I guess the opposite of fire. It's you know, a single block of aluminum basically, and so it acts as the heat sink. So it's fanless, and just feels really good in the hand. I don't know how often people are actually holding their node in their hand, but it does
we
feel
knew
really
we'd
nice.
have to go for something that was like Mac Mini level premium, because you know how people get about their hardware. They want it sleek and they want it sexy. Otherwise, it just feels cheap.
And I don't know about you
Did a
guys,
great
but
job
you know,
at that.
with my nodes, that they're used to being sat in the sort of corner of the room, sort of collecting dust that I need to sort of wipe out every now and again. But you know, with the Tanto, it's not only. Well, I tell you this. The first thing Q&A did when he got his Tanto was put it on the kitchen scales, because it is quite weighty, isn't it, Matt? When you sort of hold it, but the aluminium case acts as like a passive heat sink. So, you know, I'm just looking at my Ronin Dojo UI at the moment, and mine's running at 38 degrees, you know, without a fan, and it's sort of warm to the touch. So the whole unit acts as like a passive, well, it is a passive heat sink, pulling the heat away. So it is a beautiful piece of art, really.
Rod and Wheel, do you have a Tonto?
No. I have I actually won some contest, something with Bitcoin enemies, and I won the guns and Bitcoin 3D printed case. So I practically do have a Tanto, but it's not in that Tanto case. It's in another case. But yes, I do have a Ronin Dojo, and a little bit on top of what you all have said. Speaking from experience, I appreciate that Samurai does provide users with their own node, and it's easy just to get it started on Samurai, even if the user does not run their own full node. But ever since I started using Ronin Dojo, both on the Virgin wallet and the pre-existing wallet, the connection is way faster. In terms of speed, I do notice the change. So it's great. Not only you're autonomous, but your speed handling transactions and fetching transaction history increases a lot.
And I think it's worth saying, isn't it, that you know, we sort of very Ronin Dojo is very Samurai wallet focused, but you know, we have the ability to change the indexer. In fact, the Tantos come with Electrum Rust server as the default. and you can connect other wallets to it, including like Sparrow Wallet. I've been playing with that for the last sort of couple of months since Craig introduced Whirlpool back in September last year. So it gives the ability to connect to other wallets, but still have a sort of stable node backing it.
Yeah, because it has Electris, you can very easily use it with other nodes, other pieces of software that are on-chain based. Most of them use the Electrum standard. With something like Sparrow, it's as simple as just pasting the Electris onion address directly into Sparrow, and then it'll use your own node going forward. Sparrow's a desktop wallet. I highly recommend. Fantastic. As for a lot of freaks might be thinking about Lightning. They might be thinking about some of the other non necessarily Bitcoin specific things that Umbrel and Start9 have built into their packages, or even something like maybe Raspberry Blitz that has a lot of other Bitcoin specific stuff. Would you guys agree that it kind of makes sense if a user is using Samurai, if they're using the Samurai stack, to have a Ronin Dojo, use that dedicated for the Samurai stack. And then if you want to run other things, then you have a separate box that's running the other things.
Yes. From a security perspective, absolutely. Stuffing all those apps on one box is, even if you claim that you're using Docker containers to separate them, there's still exploits found all the time for crazy stuff like privilege escalation and arbitrary code execution between containers, and it's just too risky. And I'll go ahead and say it. There's a reason why Umbrel on their README, it says it's not 100% secure, and you shouldn't put more funds on there than you're willing to lose. And I believe that warning's still on their GitHub today. And that's the proper thing to do. Anytime you're introducing more attack vectors like that, you need to be careful. So if you're playing around and experimenting, yeah, sure, stuff all your apps on one box. But if it's your livelihood and everything that involves your financial data, that should really be isolated on one box.
And I mean, the security is a very valid reason, but I would also say there's a reason there from a reliability point of view.
Oh yeah, stability is another thing. We get lots of people coming to Ronin Dojo who are, I guess we'll call them refugees. And whenever you're stuffing all those apps in there, stability goes out the window very quick, or at least it takes a while to dial that in and have a good user experience.
Yeah, you'll often see me sort of in the chats talking to users here and there, and unfortunately when you see maybe like another node implementation that has the ability to back your Samurai wallet to the node, when they often fall into issues because those other node projects support so many other apps as well. They're not as focused on sort of on-chain privacy or specifically supporting Dojo or Samurai Wallet. So it becomes very difficult to troubleshoot those users who often haven't done anything wrong. They've just been operating their node as it's meant to be operated. So I think what Ronin Dojo prides itself on is maintaining high uptime for when you need it the most. And when you go to push a transaction, you want it to work, as silly as it sounds. Or when you want to use Whirlpool and leave your sats mixing 24/7 on your node, you want it to work and be reliable. So supporting loads of other apps, although it's nice to play around and tinker for some users, you can often fall into pitfalls with troubleshooting.
Yeah, I mean, specifically in this case, when it comes to CoinJoin, I mean, the cool part about Whirlpool's CoinJoin implementation, there's multiple different CoinJoin implementations. CoinJoin is, I mean, I think most of the freaks at this point know what CoinJoin is, but it's a collaborative transaction where you and multiple other people are sending Bitcoin transactions at the same time to improve your privacy. Whirlpool's CoinJoin implementation has a flat fee, and then after that, you can remix for free. So you keep joining CoinJoin rounds, and as a result, to take full advantage of it, you really want Whirlpool to be running 24/7. So what I've noticed with some of the other node implementations when you're running, Whirlpool on them, is they'll lock up and they'll freeze up, and you don't really realize it because it's not like an active process. It's something you're just going about your life, and in the background you're just assuming that you're getting these free remixes, and then you realize like 4 days later or 5 days later that the Whirlpool process stopped. So like that reliability there is crucial, so that you can just live your life and have some peace of mind, that it is coin joining in the background without having to constantly check it and troubleshoot it. Another thing I wanted to discuss before we move on from Ronin Dojo is one of the topics we talk about on Dispatch a lot is monetizing free and open source projects. Free and open source projects are inherently, by design, free to copy, modify, distribute. So as a result, you don't have the ability to kind of have a vendor lock-in that you see with proprietary product. And as a result, you see a lot of donation methods used to kind of support these free and open source projects. It's one of the reasons I started OpenSats. It's also one of the reasons why Citadel Dispatch is 100% audience funded. But you guys have, two interesting monetization schemes. First, obviously, this pre-built node that we've been discussing. But the other one that I found really interesting is this paid support model. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, we're kind of in the middle of overhauling that right now, and we have some news coming soon about it as we migrate to a new support portal. But yeah, I think one of the great ways to give away software for free and monetize is through offering services like guided support, like walkthroughs, setups, or even people building their own nodes that just need a little bit of command line help. A lot of people don't know where to find solutions, and they're tired of looking. Their time is more valuable than spending hours Googling stuff. And they're willing to pay, 25, 50, 60 bucks to get a certain amount of support and have, a support person there within a short amount of time who's ready to, whether it's voice chat or through Telegram or whatever. You'd be surprised how many people are willing to pay for that kind of service.
Yeah, I feel like it's win-win for everyone involved.
Yep. And obviously, we have some other tactics that we're working on to continue to monetize. But yeah, it's tough to give away software for free and keep a roof over your head while you're doing it. So the more kind of little techniques like this that we can come up with to extract a little bit of money here and there, we think it'll be enough to have, a small little company and pay a few people. And it's not easy, but it's definitely possible.
And then the hardware, the hardware itself is sort of a way to monetize through, selling a piece of kit that is unique on the market, so to speak, and it is a very nice piece of hardware that is both sort of powerful and practical. So even if you've been a long-standing Ronin Dojo user, to which when the pre-sale went live in December, there were many existing Ronin Dojo users that pre-ordered a Tanto, to which have now been delivered, and that sort of that's a way of those users showing sort of their appreciation for Ronin Dojo.
A common question that's going to happen after this discussion is the Tanto is out of stock on your website.
Yes.
When are they going to be back in stock?
Come to our booth in Miami. If you're going to BTC 2022, you can't miss our booth. It's going to be huge. We will have Tontos on the show floor. Maybe shortly before that, sales will go up to start selling some on our shop again, but we will not ship them until we get back from the Miami conference.
That's April 6th through 9th, b.tc/conference. Code open source gets you 21% off. Don't share that code on Twitter. Otherwise, it'll get cut off as well. And Guero is going to be speaking on the open source stage, which I'm very excited about.
Yeah, you're hosting that, right?
I am trying to.
Okay. Yeah, I know you're going to have a hell of a week, man.
I'm hosting all 3 days of the open source stage. So I'm not sure which panels I will be moderating, but I'm basically putting together the whole open source stage. It's like, the open source stage itself is going to basically be one of the largest Bitcoin conferences that have ever existed within the largest Bitcoin conference that has ever existed. Because the open source conference hall is like the fire code says 2,000 people. We're going to have it set up with a little less than 1,000 seats and 12 workshop tables. So there'll be it won't feel cramped, especially after last year where we were in that tiny little tent.
Oh, hell no.
That was terrible.
So I made sure to go as big as possible. And there's going to be 3 days of straight content that it is dedicated content for open source projects and contributors. So the first day will be like highly technical stuff, and then the next 2 days will be more accessible content. But basically, in practice, it's going to be like 3 days of Citadel Dispatch content. So I'm pretty excited about that. But it's been a big haul, and it's going to be, and stress is high right now, and it's only going to get higher, and a lot of moving parts. But I'm very excited about it.
I feel you on that one, man. And quick to touch on it, if anybody here has not really jumped into open source, it's really important. If you are looking for something to do, looking for a hobby, if you just got Bitcoin rich and you need something to do on the side, I really suggest looking into how to contribute to an open source project. It could be something you find useful, or maybe you just want to help them out. But I just linked in the chat a little page we have that talks about how anyone really can support open source. You don't have to be a coder. You could have graphic design skills. You could be messing with 3D printers, whatever. And, I can say for the Ronin Dojo project, we would not exist without all of the amazing volunteers who came together seemingly out of nowhere. We had devs and a hardware developer out of Taiwan, and all these volunteers came together, assembled the wiki and working support, and it's all mostly donation based, and somehow it just came out of nowhere and works. Open source really is magic, and there's so many ways to dive in and help out. On that page I just linked in the chat, you can go there.
ronindojo.io/contribute.
Yeah, if you go to ronindojo.io/contribute, you'll see there's other links on there, like how you can get involved in open source in general and some strategies. But yeah, I just had to plug that because, the only reason that this space is even alive is because of a lot of volunteer effort for free software building and more.
If I can, because of course there is always this question. We were looking forward to Ronin Dojo UI V2 for months. Is there any, I don't know, hints, any news, any forthcoming features that you can leak here or no?
Kind of. If you go to the ronindojo.io website, you'll see some screenshots of the UI that has some functionality that's not in the UI yet. So you can kind of get some hints to what is coming based on those screenshots. I can't get too specific, but you will be able to install applications via the user interface. I can say that. We also have some features coming that are specific to CoinJoin and things like calculating your entropy, so you don't have to use KYCP or OXT, centralized blockchain explorers. That there will be some functionality that's like that, that's self-hosted.
That's great.
So some really cool things to look forward to, but I can't go any further than that.
Oh, of course. It's an endless teasing session.
Yep. That's how it goes.
We just need to wait for him to get drunker, and then he'll give us some more information. What kind of apps you mean when you say apps? You mean is that alluding to the block explorers or?
That would be things like we currently have, like mempool or like switching indexers, that kind of thing. Right now, you have to there's like a application management list in the command line interface, but it is not in the new Ronin UI 2.0 yet. It's coming. That's up to Pavel whenever that gets done, but he's working on it.
Awesome.
Cool.
Rodden, you got any more questions before we move on from Ronin?
No, I think I'm good.
Brother and Guerra, you got anything you want to talk about with Ronin before we move on?
I think
covered.
I was just going to say, if you're considering wanting to run a Ronin dojo, then by all means reach out. Or there's sort of like an underground sort of privacy and sovereignty community on sort of Telegram and Matrix. So if it tickles your fancy, then drop a message in one of the chats, particularly sort of the Ronin dojo chat, and someone can direct you into sort of what hardware to buy or where to start.
How do they get to the Ronin Dojo Telegram chat? Someone linked at t.me/Ronin Dojo node.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yep.
Boom.
If you care about privacy and you want to get started off of zero, we're here to help you. Everybody's super friendly. We got the gear. We're trying to be the one-stop privacy shop. Let's get it done.
Awesome. And I wouldn't be Odell if I didn't also show the Citadel chat, which is how people participate live in the show, but also throughout the week. It's just really, really great Bitcoin conversation. I've been very pleasantly surprised. We have over 700 Bitcoiners in there now. And it's still remained high signal while Twitter has just completely gone to the shitter. So if you want to join that, that's if you go to citadeldispatch.com and just click Citadel chat, you can join that. Awesome. Well, I appreciate all the work you guys have been doing with Ronin Dojo. It is a really fantastic piece of kit. I look forward to running this Tanto through its paces, but I've graduated from the one I built myself, and I've always enjoyed your project. It's really fantastic, and the freaks know I love the Samurai Stack. Cool. So. Next discussion. I was thinking, and I talked to Rod and Wheel about this ahead of time. With everything in the news in Ukraine and in Russia and in Canada before that, there are a lot of people that are being thrust into this, very heavy financial censorship and surveillance. Bank accounts closed. In Russia, their credit cards aren't working. In Ukraine, there was a run on the ATMs, and obviously they're getting bombed. So people are trying to flee their cities, trying to cross borders, ideally with as much of their wealth as possible, at least with spending cash so they can spend on the other side of the border. So I thought it'd be a very productive and helpful conversation to kind of talk about different tools and tactics people could use in these types of heavy adversarial situations, and not just Bitcoin specific, right? Because on the Bitcoin side, fortunately, we do have like a decent amount of tooling in terms of storing your Bitcoin offline, but also just in terms of general data security and important files and important documents, maybe even family photos and stuff that you want to keep, even if you're fleeing your home in an adversarial environment. What do you guys think about that?
So you mean like on the go kits, like crossing borders, that kind of.
Yeah, the thought experiment that I was thinking was, you're in Ukraine, you're living in Kiev, the war starts, you have a backpack, you're trying to get to the border, you don't know how hostile the border is going to be when you get there. What do you pack in that bag? How do you do it?
Well, definitely one of the Calyx phones. Definitely doing the panic button setup. Have you looked into that? I think it's called the panic trigger or something like that. Have you seen that, Odell?
I know it exists, but I haven't actually used it. How do you initiate it?
So here, let me post the link in the chat too, because it's a good one.
I love Calyx. The freaks know I love Calyx. If you go to calyxos.org is their website, but basically it's a de-Googled version of Android.
So the idea with the panic button is that you can sort of preset an amount of apps, and then when you trigger the panic button, those apps will either be sort of they'll either disappear or your data will be erased, won't they?
And it goes even a step further than that. There's certain things you can set, like a dead man switch, where if you don't check your phone within a certain amount of time, it wipes the phone. You could set it to like an hour. There's also a geofence setup where if the phone goes within a certain area, or say was taken to a certain area from you, it wipes the phone.
Is this built into Calyx, or you have to install a separate app for it? Or
it's a separate app. There's two solid panic trigger apps that use what's called the panic kit. Now that I'm looking it up, there's one called Panic Button and there's one called Ripple. I think they're pretty similar. I've only checked out the Ripple one, but I put the link in the chat here for everybody to see.
And how do you actually initiate it?
Let me see here.
Is it like clicking the power button a certain amount of times or something?
So I think with Ripple, you can do pressing the power button 5 times. I think you can have like a pull down from the top pull down menu. You can add a button in there. There's a couple different ways to do it.
So just in general, I mean, on a simpler note, well, first of all, Calyx by default is full disk encrypted. I think most modern phones are at this point, of varying levels of security, including iPhones. That encryption is only in place when you have the phone powered off. So
Correct.
The general good rule of thumb is like when you are crossing borders, even if it's not in a wartime situation, even if you're not going through the TSA or something, is to have all your devices powered off before you go through those kind of checkpoints, if you can.
Right. And while we're talking about phones and checkpoints, obviously you got to be careful, how high security is this checkpoint and how deep are they going to dig. Obviously, if you go through there with a freshly wiped phone, or you set up your panic button in a way that wipes the phone to a very default looking state, that's going to be pretty suspicious. They're going to say, why don't you have any text messages? Why don't you have a gallery of pictures? Everyone has this stuff. So I've also read about people using techniques to have dummy data on their phone. So if you're crossing a border, you can hide certain apps, or you could reset your phone to a certain default state. But it's good to have kind of some dummy data to, so they see you've been texting your mom, they see you've been taking pictures of your food for Instagram, and you look like a normal person without any Bitcoin to bother them about.
Yeah, I mean, and to bring that back to Bitcoin, you have the ability to use something called a passphrase with your Bitcoin seeds. Samurai has it by default. The passphrase in practice, what you can think of it as is if you have a 12-word seed, the passphrase is the 13th word and you're choosing it. Obviously, it doesn't have to be a word. It probably shouldn't be a word. It should be longer than a word. But every time you have a different passphrase, you have essentially what you have is a different wallet. So if you are carrying a seed on you, which you probably shouldn't just be carrying a bare seed, and maybe we'll talk about that too, you can keep a certain amount of Bitcoin. This is what made me think about it, is because you were talking about decoy data. You can keep a certain amount of Bitcoin on the seed, the bare seed, without the passphrase. Someone finds that seed, they restore the seed, they see there's Bitcoin on it, they take it, they think maybe they got all of the Bitcoin. But really, you have a passphrase, and that's where the majority of your Bitcoin's held. Or maybe you have 10 passphrases, and it's split across them. So there's a lot of different methods you can employ there because of that additional passphrase.
Yep. And that, I think it's kind of a combination of all of these things is how you should bring your mobile device through a border crossing is, maybe you should have a Bitcoin dummy wallet. So if they open the Bitcoin wallet, they think, oh, this guy's just got $200 on there, and, they're not worried about it. All of these tactics can be combined to effectively fool the border crossing, and hopefully not look too suspicious while you're doing it.
And I guess, unfortunately, one of the issues here is there's never going to be a set, like a set guide of what to do and how to do it, right? You kind of have to base it on your own threat model, your own. You have to make your own decisions here. There's a level of personal responsibility, right?
Absolutely. Are you dealing with some dumbass TSA agent, or are you dealing with, some kind of 3-letter agency? It's a real 3-letter agency you need to worry about, not the TSA.
I was going to say TSA is 3 letters, so
yeah. Let me rephrase: a real agency, someone that you actually have to worry about. And if you encounter someone like that, you need to be well educated. Otherwise, they're going to figure you out.
Yeah, and I guess all of this is all well and said, but the most important thing, if you're looking at sort of hiding the amount of Bitcoin you're traveling with, is sort of keep it simple. So you might have your seed words written down. I mean, if you're just trying to cross a border, your seed words might be good, plus a passphrase which is in your head. And Matt, you mentioned about having a passphrase that is longer than one word, but if you're just trying to get over that border, then maybe a simple passphrase might be best just for that transition, and
just
then
so you don't forget it, right?
Yeah, and then you can sweep the funds when you're on the other side. And then the question is sort of how would you travel with your 12 words or your 24 words across the border? And then I think you're into the realms of either moving it digitally, so saving that on your phone maybe if that's appropriate, or writing it down in some sort of secret or sort of steganographic way. I was talking to someone last week, and whether that be sort of highlighting words in a book, perhaps, or I think back in the day it was writing a Bitcoin poem, wasn't it? That since sort of.
I'd have a lot of difficulty writing a poem with fucking randomly generated seed words in it.
Well, I think there's like a sort of script you can follow, which makes it in inverted commas easier. I wouldn't recommend doing this. I think that someone wrote a script to sort of sweep the internet of poems and try to crack people's seed phrases. But if it's just a matter of crossing a single border, you can get sort of quite experimental, or come up with some quite interesting ways of moving it. But ultimately, it needs to be fairly simple for you to recover. You don't want to sort of split your seed up into so many pieces, and then perhaps or possibly lose one. So it's keep it simple, really.
As simple as you can get away with.
Simple as you can get away with, but just in case anyone questions it, perhaps encrypt it with a not encrypt it, but add an extra word, which is a passphrase.
What are your thoughts here, Rod and Wheel?
Where to begin? I guess I should first share that I'm Venezuelan. I was born and raised in Venezuela, so I actually had once, luckily just once. So the way I did it, I did it in 2 rounds. First, I just crossed the border without any Bitcoin. I didn't have anything on me. Just to put the luggage on the other side, leave it in some storage, and come back. When I came back, I had an undisclosed amount of cash. I was leaving the country. It was on the brink of getting even worse than it had been for the past, 15 years. I knew it was time just to leave, just to call it quits. So what I did was I coupled with a friend. This gets kind of illegal, but it's what I did. I just crossed the border through some river. I didn't go through the checks. You can actually do that between the border in Venezuela and Colombia. You can pay some thugs, whatever. They just look away and you cross the border through a river. We crossed the river with an undisclosed amount of cash. I didn't even cross with the Bitcoin on me. I hadn't bought any Bitcoin. And once I got to Colombia, I bought the Bitcoin in cash, KYC free. And then a couple days after, I just took off, and then there I was. So I didn't go through the hassle of figuring out how to cross the border with any seed or stashing it in some luggage. Not necessarily because I didn't want to, but because for handling cash internationally, you cannot, cross borders with, I'm going to throw random numbers with, 50K, because of course they're going to ask you questions and potentially just seize the cash. I just had to proceed in some Latino way. Was it fun? It wasn't fun. It was risky. It got dicey. I didn't know what was going to happen, because there actually are guerrillas besides the authorities. So I was not against a single head. I was against multiple heads. But still, I had to risk it, because if I don't pull the cash now, when am I going to return to pull however much I had? It was like, either you do it or you don't. You abandon the cash. I would say that it's tough when you're put in a position of either you risk your life or you're done for. You will start from zero in another country. You could potentially not even speak their language. So for me, it was, it was not fun. It was not engaging. It's not something that I recommend to anybody, not even my worst enemy. Did I do it? Yes, I did it. Am I proud of what I did? Yes, of course, because I was protecting some capital that was mine. But that's a tangent. Kind of returning to the topic of stashing seeds. I definitely do not advise, or wouldn't advise, or wouldn't do it myself, to keep my passphrase or my seeds in my brain. I think that's an awful advice. Essentially because I wouldn't be able to recall the first 3 words, let alone 12 or 24. That's just stupid. Pardon my French. I would just write the words down on some book and some random pages, not even mark them, and then go through them as soon as I cross the border. In order for you to actually keep the seats in order, you should keep it as simple as possible. that's the problem when you find yourself in these tight positions. You start overthinking and you start saying, no, but the cop is going to find it. No, but the cop is going to start asking me questions. And I don't know if it sounds funny or not, but in Latin America, things are done that simply. There is no point in overthinking or making your setup so complicated that you're so anonymous and you're so, I don't know, so big into LARPing and stuff. You do things, fringe things on plain sight, and that's the best way to hide it.
I think you nailed it. You do what you got to do. Not everyone has to be super sleuth spy man. Not everyone is up against that kind of adversary. In his case, he was, you're dealing with guerrillas basically, / maybe loosely affiliated with some military at border crossings. They don't care. They'll take a bribe, and they don't want to try to hack into your phone or that kind of thing. So really, you need to know your enemy and know his sword, and how are they going to attack? What methods are they going to try to use? And Rotten Wheel has a good point. A lot of people do really overthink this stuff, and they end up screwing themselves. A perfect example is like when you get too complex with multi-sig, and you didn't need to do that, and you end up losing your coins or having a tough time when you could have just used a passphrase. So it's just about what is your threat model and what is your actual concern of who is your adversary and what skills do they have.
Rodden, thank you for sharing that story. Was there a reason why you didn't convert the cash to Bitcoin first in Venezuela?
Sure. At the time, I didn't actually know about Bitcoin too much. I hadn't heard too much. I hadn't dived. I did not know anybody that actually was into Bitcoin. Of course, I didn't want to spread the word around of I have some cash that I want to convert because I'm leaving the country. I was trying to keep everything hush-hush. And one thing led to another. I just became acquainted with some guy across the border that dealt Bitcoin, OTC Bitcoin. And I was like, hey, can I come? I have X amount, whatever. What rate could you give me? Do I see you, I don't know, X date? And he was like, sure, of course. He had a premium. But again, that's a Bitcoin that nobody but that guy, and now, I don't know, thousands of people know that I could have. But still, it's Bitcoin that does not have any documentation tied to it. So if I ever had any KYC Bitcoin, I label it as a shitcoin. And actually, the KYC Bitcoin is the one that I spend regularly. I want to get rid of that crap as soon as possible.
So, we can talk about KYC in a second.
Sure. It's just a lot of tangents. This topic is...
I feel that. Trust me. I don't even know. At this point, probably over 200 hours of dispatch, and probably the majority of it is significantly more than, it's like 200 hours of dispatch, and most of it's tangents. Try and keep it organized. So, from my understanding there is you just basically weren't really familiar with Bitcoin at the time of the crossing.
No.
Do you see? I assume, I don't want to put words in your mouth. If you were familiar with Bitcoin, you would 100% cross with Bitcoin rather than cash, right? It's just easier to cross with.
Absolutely, yes. But also the other, I don't know, nuance, the other problem here that you need to factor in is that was precisely the timing when the government was clamping down on miners. The government was prosecuting Venezuelans for Bitcoin. So I was, again, it was so hectic for me those couple of weeks or however long it was, because I didn't know what I could do. I could, I don't know, find somebody in Venezuela, but they happen to be some informant, some undercover agent, and instead of me migrating, I end up without my cash and it caged for however long. So I was like, fuck that.
Yeah, so I mean, in that case, it could actually, if you were trying to convert a large amount of cash to Bitcoin in that situation, it could actually put you at more risk than just dealing with crossing with cash. I
Yeah,
think that brings up a really good point. I think that has become apparent for a lot of people over the last few weeks with everything that's been going on. Is that, a lot of these things, you're in a lot better position if you're prepared ahead of time before the crises hit. Once the crises hit, everything becomes much more difficult, right?
yes, yeah, 100%. I'm just glad that I made it out. I'm glad that I made it out without a bruise. I'm glad that I made it out without taking any losses, be it emotional or capital wise. But 100%, once you're in that position of either make it or just you're fucked up, then you don't tend to think straight, and you can take very bad decisions, and many things can head south. So if anything, I mean, the lesson is just wiggle it. What else can you do?
Yeah.
It's tough. It's really tough. And when things like Ukraine or Russia happen, that I don't know, there is a lot of bank runs, and then there is huge lines of people trying to withdraw cash because they no longer trust the government, or they're panicking about the situation. Then that's a whole other issue, because if you don't have a good amount of cash or money converted to Bitcoin, then your hands are tied. You need to either suck it up and somehow get your cash, or just flee cashless and start from zero. I think one of the biggest concerns of mine back then was exactly that. If I don't make it, then I'm going to be fucked.
That's some heavy shit. I appreciate you sharing it, my dude. On this, yeah, go on.
I won't waste more time.
You're
but,
not wasting any time. Continue.
Besides that, and just more than talking about Bitcoin crossing borders, I have multiple anecdotes, because for other reasons, personal reasons, I traveled overseas a couple times, or more than a couple times. But more than once, I would be crossing that same border, and the Colombian and the Venezuelan government hate each other. So they at some point closed it, and they had declared some martial border. So I was crossing the border legally. I does the same, crosses the border by foot, walking, it's fine. But I remember one day I'll pull over, they send you to a small room. There is the soldier, or whatever it was, and of course they can stomp on your rights, on your civil rights, however much they want. He went all the way through my luggage, and then he proceeded to ask for my wallet. The wallet wide open, went through the cards, the IDs, the cash that I had in there, and then he goes, "You have more than, I don't know, 50 euros, $50. This is not good because martial law, blah 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 blah." And then he took however much cash I had and just let me go. And he said, "I'm letting you go just because you have the cash, and I hope you understand that this is not good. This is forbidden. You could be sent to jail." So that's the level of corruption, of we don't care about your rights, just give us our money, that I was dealing with. And that had happened before the forced migration happened, not after. So you can figure that I had already some, I don't know, awful experience. Of course, I was aware of that. I was born and raised in that shithole, I did not know any other government different than the one that I had known. So I knew exactly what I was up against, but for me it was an experience that I wasn't initially expecting. Because you get accustomed to just stashing things, to just hide things in plain sight. You just get accustomed to having a criminal state, and you mold yourself according to whatever you're dealing with that day.
And after hearing that, I don't know how anyone can question the importance of Bitcoin being digital cash and self-custody and all and all that stuff. You know, it's not just a number go up asset. It's changing lives for people out there and helping them in situations that there used to not really be a solution for.
So you want to transition into that conversation? I mean, one other thing that before we just move on from this, I mean, there's non-Bitcoin if there's non-Bitcoin data you want to travel with, I personally really like the idea of encrypted micro SD cards. They're fucking tiny. They can hold a lot of fucking data. You can have multiple of them. If you're running Linux, it has the built-in Lux encryption, so you can encrypt any drive, including micro SD cards. Put them in your sock. You can put them anywhere you want to put them. I feel like that could be a very useful tool to people. And once again, it's, keep it simple. It's an encrypted drive. You do it through the built-in Linux encryption, the Lux encryption, and you keep redundant copies, and you're good.
Something
That's
I want to
a
ask.
decent idea. Go ahead.
What's up, brother?
I was going to say something I want to ask Rotten is that, knowing what you know now and having the sort of friends and I guess the sort of Bitcoiners, and I know you're into Monero too. Would you have sort of done the crossing differently, perhaps giving an element of trust into a sort of trusted friend that was on the other side, so to speak, or trusted somebody with your wealth when crossing, or would you still have sort of kept it in your own hands in terms of moving your wealth across border?
It's a tough question. I don't know how to answer that, but I personally, regardless of how much I know now or what happened back then, I would dare say that I wouldn't entrust my capital or my cash to anybody. I wouldn't ask for advice from anybody, because thanks to that type of society or that type of state, you grow ever so tired of entrusting anybody. Everybody's trying to look after themselves. If they get a chance to fuck you over, trust me, they will. So that's precisely, I was stingy. I was very cautious with disclosing, hey, I'm migrating. Instead of doing that, I just did my own thing. One thing that I would emphasize is just, if you're fleeing a country, just do it KYC free. So neither the state you're in, neither the country you're in, nor the state you're fleeing to knows that you actually have possession of those coins. And better yet, if you can use, I don't know, a breach country like I did, because I'm not actually in Colombia, I'm elsewhere, then even better, because you're obfuscating even further whatever it is that you're kind of keeping stashed to yourself. And I don't even know if I'm answering your question. It's just a tough position. It's just a tough thing to deal with. Of course, across time, I would say that enduring that or embracing that type of thing has taught me a couple things, and it's just hard. I don't know what type of advice I would give, other than and brace for impact. And things can happen very quickly. Today we see with Ukraine and Russia that just a flip of a pen, or just talk by Putin, flip the pancake entirely. But many other scenarios can happen as well. So you just gotta be prepared. And those times in which you say, no, it doesn't happen in the first world. Fuck yeah, it happens in the first world. It can happen anywhere. It happened in Canada, and it happened within few hours. It didn't happen, I don't know, in 3-4 weeks. That stupid prime minister just declared some similar national state to that of World War. So what the heck is wrong with that guy?
Yeah, no, you definitely answered my question. I think what I was sort of angling at is that something that we often champion about is sort of being self-sovereign, and the actions you took, albeit somewhat difficult to hear, and not sure I could see myself in that situation. But it comes down to being self-sovereign with your Bitcoin and your wealth, and your data, to what we touched on before. And it's difficult when it comes to it, but being able to trust yourself more than anybody else is maybe what's important.
Yeah, I wish the situation in Venezuela had been better, or that I had better context. I don't know, some miners, some OTC traders, and it would have been way easier for me. I wouldn't have taken a couple trips. I wouldn't have done the river thing. I would just have done what I preached before. Just write down 12 words or 24 words in different pages in a book, and just stash it somewhere in the luggage. And don't even bother about having a Bitcoin wallet in my phone. With the seed, I know that I can restore it anywhere else once I cross the border or get to my destination. There is not even a need for me to have anything on the phone that says I'm a Bitcoiner or I'm into Monero. As long as I have the seed, that's fine. And the way that you can, I don't know, provide yourself with some ease of mind is, once you have written it down somewhere, however you want to do it, you take the words, you take a virgin wallet, and you try to restore the seed. So you know that whenever you cross the border, you're going to have your money safe. I wouldn't even bother about the passphrase. It's just, the bottom line is just keep things simple. Attest that they work before you do it, and just roll with it. That it's as simple as that. When you find yourself in those tough spots, you're just killing yourself with your mind, and instead of making changes, you're making things worse.
And also, to continue on about recovering seed phrases, I've just put a link in the chat. The Calyx phone as well has a seed vault encrypted backup. So, if you need to recover your Bitcoin or recover your Calyx phone, the functionality is very similar. I believe both of them are 12 words, at least if you're using Samurai Wallet. So really, as long as you can come up with a scheme for this, then I think you can cross these borders effectively and recover whatever data you want, whether it's your Bitcoin or your phone or whatever.
The main difference with the Calyx Seed Vault is you also need the digital encrypted file.
Okay, that's good to know.
So either on like a micro SD, or you put it in the cloud or something, because it is encrypted with the seed.
Right, that's a good idea. You could use a cloud, or even using stuff like PGP, and then have that encrypted in plain sight, and then have your key hidden off somewhere. A mix of all of these tactics, however you want to combine them, and a little bit of education. And I think people could fool most border crossings and have a really effective kind of mobile setup if they need to be on the go.
So
Yeah.
Robin, yeah, go on.
Go ahead. No, please. You.
So Rodden, I know you listen to the show. I know you have very strong opinions. I met you in Miami. I gave you a dispatch hat for free after you asked to pay me in Monero. You're one of 3 freaks that have asked me to pay in Monero since I've been distributing the dispatch hats. What do you want to talk about? I know you have strong opinions. I know you think certain things aren't covered on here. You want to talk about KYC?
I mean, there is plenty of topics. I mean, we could go on for hours. If we can get to KYC, I appreciate the invite. I appreciate the hug that you gave me along with the hat too. No Omo for the record. But can we talk about number go up, please?
Yeah. Boom. Let's talk about it. Start us off.
Because at the end of the day, the thing with these scenarios of the borders is that there is a huge difference, and you see firsthand, or you experience it firsthand when you're escaping things. If you buy KYC coins and you flee with those coins, they're going to have a permanent record, or not a permanent, before some compliant asshole says that it's a store for 10 years only because it's written in law, blah, blah, blah. Let's say 10 years. There is going to be a record of how much you bought, when, how, for 10 years while you're being, I don't know, a refugee. And for me, it's pointless. And the problem with number go up and mass adoption things is that they make the user lazy. They make the user more prone to entrust in third parties, to entrust in centralized exchanges. They don't advocate for self-custody. So effectively, number go up or permanent pull, or however you want to label it, it's kind of a counterproductive narrative, because it's undermining what we're in for. If we're in here to become sovereign, to free ourselves, to be self-defiant, ungovernable misfits, while we're advocating for people to, I don't know, sign up on Swan or Cash App or your next KYC shop, you're kind of being a hypocrite, because you're advocating just to enrich yourself. You're not advocating to free others or yourself. And that's what pisses me off big time, because while you're advocating for a tool for freedom, you're not using the tool correctly. You're telling the state that you own it. And not only you're telling the state that you own it, you're also entrusting private companies with your data. So it's like, what are you doing? And it happens in multiple chains. I'm not saying this just because Bitcoin maximalists suck. It happens in Monero as well. It happens anywhere. Number go up is just stupid. And there cannot be just one coin either. This is going on a tangent, but still, I don't care if Bitcoin goes to $1 tomorrow. I know the mining dynamics, blah, blah, blah. It's not profitable, blah, blah, blah. But the point is, if Bitcoin were to go to $1 tomorrow and Monero goes to 1 cent tomorrow, the transactions will still clear. People would still be sovereign. People will be still sovereign. So I think the motto of my rant is, let's focus more on sovereignty, on freedom, on freedom of speech, and financial freedom and independence, rather than Bitcoin is going to go through, I don't know, 200 million. There is not going to be anything else. We're phasing everything out just because Austrian economics are awesome and whatever else. It's just a lot of blatant back pumping, and it's just, pardon my French, and I'm done with this, retarded.
Well, I mean, I agree with a lot of what you said, if not most of it. Would you, when you say number go up, you don't necessarily mean, do you not think that the purchasing power will increase?
Whoa, what happened there? Somebody drops something. Can you repeat that?
Guerrero just smacked his table.
Nah, it's my cat jumping on shit behind me. Continue.
You mean more of like the culture surrounding it rather than actual like purchasing power going up.
Yeah, for sure. It's just the lots of people on Twitter or whatever else that just go on cancel rampages, get it off of BISC or mine it or buy OTC, and it's like, yes, we're going to achieve mass adoption through Swan, but that's not the way. It's like, I don't know. For me, it feels like I see a person hitting their heads with a closet door over and over again and being in denial. Yes, we're winning the fight, but we're not exactly winning. I'm shooting my own feet while I'm saying that I'm winning. You get what I mean? It's like,
it's funny. I was at a meetup last night, and some of the guys there are kind of newer Bitcoiners, and they were kind of coming to the same realization where mass adoption at all costs, if huge KYC exchanges, most people having their coins locked up on exchanges like it is right now, they came to the conclusion themselves that that's just not worth it. It's kind of defeating to this dream of, the white paper itself is titled Bitcoin is electronic cash, and it's supposed to be peer-to-peer without intermediaries. Satoshi said it in the first sentence of the abstract. So it couldn't be clearer, what the mission is here. And I think most people will realize very quickly, especially once you have a sizable stack and you could become a target, that it's not worth it to have everyone within the walled garden. If that's what it takes for mass adoption, then we've effectively failed. And I get that privacy will always be a fringe movement, and self-custody is getting a lot better, and more people than ever are pulling their coins off exchanges and things like that and thinking about privacy. And, the wind is in our sails very much, but we still have a really, really long way to go before we even put a dent in all of this KYC mindset and custodial mindset.
So do you guys think, I think we all agree that, KYC Bitcoin has already captured Bitcoin. It's ideal that people self-custody. I still think that's a net benefit, even if they KYC. But, in a truly adversarial environment, if there's a record of you purchasing Bitcoin, how much Bitcoin you purchased, your withdrawal addresses, you don't use any privacy best practices going forward. So your future transactions and balances are essentially actively tracked. There's a lot of points where pressure can be put on you. We just saw with the Department of Justice, they seized those Bitfinex hacked coins, right? And that was the largest single seizure in Department of Justice history. So we have people sending out engagement tweets saying that, Bitcoin is unconfiscatable. But meanwhile, the largest confiscation in Department of Justice history was done with Bitcoin. So obviously the privacy aspect is key there. And it's not just the state, because these records are kept practically forever. You can just pretty much assume they're kept forever. And they're stored insecurely. We've seen anything that can get hacked will get hacked. So it's not just the state. It's all different sorts of malicious entities that are going to get their hands on this kind of information.
There's too many misconceptions about Bitcoin. And this has happened to everyone. You remember, even whenever we listened to Ross Ulbricht speak at the BTC 2021, he said he mistakenly thought that Bitcoin was private, right? And this has been going on for a long time. People say it's unconfiscatable. It's not. Just like you said, they confiscated it from the Department of Justice confiscated it from
they
the
put a gun to their head.
Exactly.
Said, give us the fucking Bitcoin.
It is confiscatable. It can be centralized. It can be fully custodial. And Bitcoin is what you make it. It is how you use the tools. and Bitcoin means different things to different people. So sure, while an energy plant wants to offset their flare off by using Bitcoin, and they're already within the system, that's one thing. That Bitcoin means one thing to that industry. But to our side of the industry, where we want to use Bitcoin like it's cash, you have to use the tools completely differently, and you have to operate completely differently. And if you just listen to people on Twitter who say, Bitcoin's perfect, it's perfectly decentralized, it's totally unconfiscatable, it's anonymous, whatever, then you're going to get fooled, and you're not going to get proper education. You're just going to smash that like button and believe everything you read.
Like and retweet.
Yep. And, unfortunately, it's detrimental. These influencers are fucking over a lot of people, and especially people who really need privacy, because there's people out there, like he was talking about in Venezuela, and we see users like this all the time in the Ronin Dojo and the Samurai rooms. There's people out there who can't screw up. And if they do, it has serious real world consequences. And these influencers are not taking it seriously. I don't know if they're just boosting their ego, or they're just engagement farming. But either way, I see it as harmful to the industry at large.
Yeah, when you screw up on Bitcoin, it happens on a ledger that is probably going to outlive us all. Yep. So it can be used against you in the future by a passive attacker that might not even be watching you yet, doesn't have external data yet, but gets it later. But to jump off there, where I was going with that question was, it wasn't a question yet, but this was the question. Is this idea of like mass adoption at all costs, this idea of the majority of people coming in through KYC, is it an attack on Bitcoin, or is it a threat to the individuals that are captured by it?
Both, in my opinion.
Yeah. I could sound like Alex Jones or some shit like that. But for me, KYC is an active attack from the state and the private companies, and the centrally a way to seize a considerable amount of the supply and hold the hostage and be like, I don't know, some fucked up movie scene. Do you want the ice cream cone? Come and get it, but first suck my dick. You know what I mean? It's just fucked up. KYC, it's the enemy, and it's. I don't say that I'm pristine. I don't say that I'm the best Bitcoin owner and I'm supremely anonymous on Mars, because I as well have KYC coins. They may or may not be mine, as in I was the one who put the documents, but regardless, I have owned KYC coins, and as I say before, they're like poison to me. As long as I see the opportunity to spend them, go for it. It's just an effective attack from the state and the central banks, and should be avoided at all costs. That's my take.
Using Bitcoin or sort of accepting Bitcoin donations can be done in sort of with the best intentions, can't it? Trying to use an asset which is unconfiscatable, and as S2L said before, as peer-to-peer electronic digital cash is all well and great, but it's an immutable ledger, and I think we saw the sort of the events of the Canada donations to the truckers that were protesting. I guess sort of Bitcoin Twitter went from sort of, I don't really know how to phrase it, but sort of celebrating and championing a crowdsource fund of Bitcoin to support the truckers. But when it came down to it, and I don't mean to say this in a too much of a negative sense, because I think that those that backed the sort of the crowdfund campaign did it for the right reasons. But when it came down to it, there was some sort of basic, unfortunately, some basic Bitcoin sort of 101 rules, can you call it those? That weren't followed, which sort of led to some real big screw ups. And going back to, I think one of you said earlier, not screwing up. Well, not screwing up today doesn't mean not being bit in the ass, tomorrow or in a week or in a year, because of the immutable ledger. So obtaining no KYC Bitcoin is a step in the right direction. Certainly, there are some tools you can use with Bitcoin that can certainly help you transact, not only sort of freely but privately. And watching the sort of the what went on in Canada with that donation round was really difficult to observe, because what I guess maybe us that have sort of frequented the more privacy sort of chats on Telegram and on Twitter and the likes, is difficult to watch, because reusing addresses, for example, is one that is horrible to watch, and easily tracked on chain. And not using CoinJoin, regardless of whether you obtained your Bitcoin through KYC means, making a donation with Bitcoin which hasn't been through CoinJoin, to put a line in the sand between where your Bitcoin came from and its future spending, trail. It's difficult to watch people sort of screw others through their use of not trying to transact privately on Bitcoin.
Definitely well said and very diplomatic. And I think what Brother Rabbit was trying to say is a bunch of influencers got caught with their freaking pants down and proved, what they really know and what the status of things really is. That was a great litmus test for the current status of Bitcoin privacy. And it failed, right? Miserably. It shows that, education is extremely important. And like what you're doing, Brother Rabbit, or Bitcoin QA, or whoever's helping, write guides, support, teach, that's the best thing we can do. Because when you look at that shit show that happened with the donations in Canada, it's very obvious we have a long way to go in proper education.
Yeah, that shit was extremely frustrating to watch go down. On a positive note, as a result of that, I did Citadel Dispatch 57 with Pavel Nex and CoinJoiner and Tony, and we covered pretty much. I like to think that everything you need to know about crowdfunding with best practices taken into account in an adversarial environment. So if you are thinking of crowdfunding in the future and you're listening to this, you should go listen to that episode 57.
Going back real quick, I wanted to
Yeah.
highlight, if you don't think that KYC and mass chain surveillance is an attack on Bitcoin, you got to check yourself, because what better way is there to attack something than to bring it into the fold, bring it into the system, right? They can't turn it off. They can't fight it. They can't disable all the nodes and all the miners. So what better way than you to need your ID and, your driver's license, your passport, what better way to control this thing? And if everyone has to work within these walled gardens, and say things like self-custody become frowned upon, or it becomes difficult, like exchanges start asking you tons of questions about self-custodied coin or coin-joined coin, then that's going to be their way to crack down effectively. You put the privacy guys in a corner, you put the self-custody guys in a corner and put pressure on them. And everyone else who stays within the fold and gives up their ID, then they're fine.
They all get number go up. They might actually think it's bullish. It's regulatory clarity.
And remember, whenever Bitcoin used to be about challenging the dollar, having a true alternative, when did parking in Tether and having all these options to trade to stable coins and all this stuff. But when did that become popular? It happened overnight, but that's not really what Bitcoin is about. It's not about USD gains. It's not about number go up. It might be for you if that's how you treat it. You treat it just like a savings account and you never spend a sat in your life. But for a lot of people, that's not what Bitcoin means. And at least for all the freaks who are listening out there, KYC is the antithesis of Bitcoin, and you should know that.
And I mean, besides the whole surveillance aspect of KYC, and I would, it was a little bit, I was curious what you guys are going to answer, but it's obviously an attack on Bitcoin. It's a massive attack on Bitcoin, and everyone's just blissfully unaware or intentionally ignorant about it. And I think part of it is because it's just easier to be an influencer if you just absolve yourself and everyone else of personal responsibility. So I think there's an element of laziness. I think there's an element of ego. I think there's an element of monetization. It's easier to monetize sheep than free men. But in addition to the surveillance aspects of KYC, I mean, KYC these requirements keep out a ton of people in terms of financial access. I mean, there's boatloads of people that are blocked out of the traditional financial system, and they're blocked out of these KYC on ramps as well with Bitcoin. So it's to
That's
me,
a great
Bitcoin
point.
has been about financial freedom, right? And they're just completely blocked out from using these tools. And it's more than just on ramps now. It's tools that you use once you have Bitcoin as well, right? It's not just the on and off ramps like people like to say.
And remember whenever Bitcoin used to be banking the unbanked or the underbanked? Well, what was that, 2014, 2015, when people used to say that? What happened to that? Where did that go? How are we going to bank the unbanked and the underbanked and people who don't have access to proper ID and proper banking services? How are we going to get them taken care of if everything in the future is, strike and KYC'd up and custodial? And, those people are never going to qualify.
And you see a taste of it with BlockFi, because like BlockFi explicitly, blocks CoinJoin usage. So it's a slippery slope where it's like, do they technically let you do self-custody? Like, yeah, but like if you do something on chain they don't like after you take custody, they close your account and take any funds that you have in your account.
Yep.
So
And honestly,
are
I
they
see
really
a
giving you
divide
self-custody, or are they like, is that even self-custody at that point?
No, I mean, barely. And also I see a divide just coming in general in the industry. The compliant platforms and non-compliance will continue to separate, and there will be a bigger and bigger divide over time, in my opinion.
Pressure from all angles, and most people are just blissfully unaware.
I mean, I can't.
What is sad is that divide manifests within us. You can clearly see how we're just getting between. Sorry for the punchline, Matt. I don't mean it, but we're getting split between stay humble, stack sats, and just be a defiant asshole and stack through BISC, and I don't know, spend it through, I don't know, dark market.
I don't
You know
think
what I mean?
Stay humble, stack sats is
No, it's just
necessarily
a joke.
KYC cuck services.
No.
I think you should be humble enough to realize the threat that KYC is.
Indeed.
But
again, it was just I was just being playful.
That's why I love you. I mean, I think that's one of the. I mean, stay humble, stack sats is what you make of it. But at least from my perspective, like it's this idea that you need to have personal responsibility. There's, I think, a lot of what you can see in the corruption of this space over the last however many years. I mean, people don't even realize, like in 2016, like KYC was basically nowhere, and it just got rolled out everywhere really quick, normalized super fucking quick. People come into the space now, and they KYC at like 8 different services. They send their passport all over the place. Like, part of it to me is like, be humble enough to realize that, like, when BlockFi tells you, I mean, they don't even offer it anymore, but when like BlockFi tells you like you're going to get 6% on your Bitcoin, and that there's like no risk there, that there's a shit ton of risk, and that you're just completely exposing yourself.
I mean, I don't think BlockFi are the only ones sort of, with dirty hands, really. You've got
100%.
You've got companies like one that springs to mind is like Bottle Pay. I mean, they
100%.
were a UK business that I wasn't too familiar with them before they, if you like, went away and came back. But to my understanding, their intentions were good before they went away, and they went away under sort of new regulations that were brought in the UK, and they're ones that have sort of taken those would you call it regulations, Matt? I mean, let's call it regulations. Taken those.
Yeah. With Bottle Pay, first of all, I was an advisor to Bottle Pay before they were KYC'd. And I was proud of their team so what happened was the FCA, which is like the British FinCEN or whatever, the financial regulator, came in and hit them with KYC. Like, new regs came out, very strict. They were like, you need to KYC everybody. And what they did was they completely shut down Bottle Pay, had everyone withdraw all their money.
Yeah.
And then they separately launched a KYC product. So after that, there was a lot of fuckery that happened, and they were blocking CoinJoin, and there was a lot of over-compliance that was happening. But at least at that transition, that's, kind of what you want to see. I mean, they put themselves at risk doing that. That was not the easy move. Would have been shotgun KYC, and we see that all the time. Binance did shotgun KYC, right, where they onboarded people saying you didn't have to do KYC, and then after they had funds on the accounts, they were like, you can't withdraw unless you do KYC.
But it's exactly that. It's that over compliance, and when they came back, I don't think they offered to what we've been talking about today. I don't think they offered anything of benefit to Bitcoin.
Right.
For the sort of morals and principles mentioned above, if you like. And they're a business that just relies on people DCAing all the time, and not even spending, not using Bitcoin as it was designed. Now, as Satoshi called it, digital cash has sort of been interpreted a few different ways over the years, but I think the sort of agreed upon definition is that it is like the cash out of your wallet. And when you've got Bottle Pay refusing, I think not only have they refused deposits that have got past CoinJoin history, they've also, and I may stand corrected on this, but they've also pulled up customers that have withdrawn and then CoinJoin their funds. So
I don't think so.
No? Okay. I'll have to do my research.
What service did you say was doing that? Bottle Pay? Or
It was deposits only, is my understanding.
Oh, okay.
I believe the service you're
does
thinking was
withdrawals.
BlockFi. Yeah. There was one that was like 2 months after withdrawal that they followed up on, and that was pretty shocking.
But I expect most of them to start doing that. Like, that's not
agreed. Yep.
And I do too. And what that is saying to all of us is that they don't give a shit about your privacy. Even though you might have had to KYC for that service or whatever, so they already didn't care about your privacy. But talking about your future spending habits, or any future any habits you or any sort of privacy you want to take back when spending, they don't give a shit. So although KYC, no KYC is more difficult, and we try to champion it as much as we can. We try to provide people with the information as best we can, these sort of services are sort of falling by the wayside. In fact, I tried out a new no KYC service last week, Azteco.
Yeah.
Although they've been around for a fair while, they bought in a service through PayPoint, so it seemed genius at the time, and I'll get to the punchline in 2 moments. But the idea was that you go online, you create an invoice, if you like. You can either do it on chain or on Lightning. You enter in an email address, so you could use like an email alias, and you turn up at a PayPoint. Now in the UK, you can pay your gas and electric bill through PayPoint, and what it is you walk into your corner shop, if you like, and you scan a barcode, and you pay with your cash your gas and electric. So Azteco integrated with that system to pay for Bitcoin. Now, it all seems great, and I think it was on Saturday. I was at a meetup on Saturday, and a couple of the guys were sort of quite excited to hear about this new service. So I was accompanied by, I think, 4 other people to the corner shop with my barcode in hand, and got myself some no KYC Bitcoin. But that service has since been pulled, and it doesn't look like it's going to return, at least not sort of from the Twitter sentiment. But we can expect for no KYC to continually be sort of squashed, if you like.
Yeah, I mean, I respect what the guys at Azteco are building, but it does seem like their strategy, at least from my perspective, is basically offload the regulatory burden on the individual vendors.
Yeah, totally.
And ultimately, individual states are going to pressure them to either a centralized service. So I fear the unfortunate reality is that you're going to see KYC roll out on those types of products as well. Hopefully it takes longer. One thing that was interesting this week is the US and their allies have put like their full weight of their financial weaponry on Russia with sanctions. And as a result, regulated Bitcoin businesses are on the defensive because there's accusations that maybe Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies are being used to evade sanctions. And as a result, what happened is, one of the really dark aspects of all this financial regulation is that there's essentially, either by law or lawyer advice, you have a situation where these companies can't really talk about what their policies are. They never talk about them. They very rarely talk about them publicly. Even more rare is talking about exactly what their procedures are. And I originally, when I started working in this space, thought maybe there was a concept of like a best practices, like the best possible on-ramp in spite of KYC. And I advised 2 companies that were KYC on-ramps. Disclose them early and often. They're BottlePay and Swan. Both pre-launch. BottlePay started out non-KYC. Swan was always KYC. But I saw a lot of like the behind-the-scenes shit that people don't see and that is never talked about. And I've since, do not think it's productive for me to spend my time doing that, and better to focus on supporting open source projects, supporting free education to people so that they can make their own decisions and their own assessments. But one thing that is really interesting here this last week is because these Bitcoin exchanges were put on the defensive, they're going above and beyond to kind of explain what their processes are. And we had Brett Harrison, who I believe is the CEO of FTX. He had this thread that he put out 2 days ago. And he outlined basically like their entire process. And I just want to read it real quickly. We collect identifying information of every user, including name, date of birth, phone number, social security number, and photo ID. We cross-check this info against government databases to ensure veracity, name matches, social security number, etc. If we can't verify an identity, that user is rejected and prohibited from trading. If a user's identity is fully verified, we then check the name against all sanctions lists and watch lists, including Treasury's OFAC list, DOJ's FBI wanted list, and the UN's consolidated sanction list. If found, the user is rejected and prohibited from trading. We monitor the user's fiat transactions. If we detect a deposit coming from or a withdrawal going to a sanctioned bank or other blacklisted source, we block the user's activity. We monitor the user's crypto deposits withdrawals using on-chain risk analysis and transaction monitoring tools such as Blank, surveillance tools. We use the same transaction monitoring tools that government agencies use. These tools have databases of known sanctioned addresses, heuristics that determine geographic locations, and machine learning algos that identify suspicious patterns and transfer histories. If we detect suspicious activity, we block the user from moving assets. Along with the above methods, we are in continuous productive dialogue with governments, regulators, and law enforcement and update our procedures based on their instruction. Crypto exchanges have extremely advanced technology and effective procedures for enforcing AML and sanctions. Recent public assertions that crypto is an effective means of evading sanctions due to lack of industry regulation are without factual support. And then after he did that, Coinbase also released their own post yesterday. And in their post, they said they had blocked 25,000 addresses that were associated with Russians, including some addresses that the government wasn't aware of that they then shared with the government. And they said this one thing, they have methods for identifying accounts held by sanctioned individuals outside of Coinbase, even if we don't have direct access to their personal information. I mean, we know Coinbase has their own surveillance platform that they also sell to governments. Through advanced blockchain analysis, we proactively identified over 1,200 additional addresses potentially associated with the sanctioned individual. We added it to our internal block list. We shared it with the government to further support sanctions enforcement. So it was like it definitely turned into a little bit of like a looking glass moment, you know?
Yeah. It shows you, first of all, how far these systems have come and how automated they are. You know, these aren't people individually handling accounts one by one. You know, this chain analysis software is assigning risk scores and it's automatically flagging users based on that. And it's getting better every day. And it's super important to understand your adversary. Like one of my favorite quotes is "Know your enemy, know his sword," and that what you just said is very telling, and it shows you, you know, just what we're up against.
Like, how can someone think that's not an attack on Bitcoin?
Because they're compliant, they're within the system. I mean, that's the only way someone could see it that way, if they believe in KYC AML.
What do you
Get
think?
get on zero, bro.
Get on zero. What do you think about this this phenomenon that I've been noticing, that it's like I'm not a pussy, like I don't care if you know, like come and take it.
Yeah, you talk that way until someone puts a gun in your face. It's fun to LARP and act like a big dog and say, you know, no one's going to take it from me. You know, I got my guns or whatever. But whenever your door actually gets kicked in, things go a little bit different than, like, what's that famous Mike Tyson quote? Everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people are just either they don't live in the U.S. and they don't have to worry about certain things, or they don't live in a place where they have to worry, or they're just naive and they've never actually been in a real situation like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a lot of naivety.
Absolutely. I don't want to dox myself.
And then there's a lot of cope too.
One time, you know, I had a gun put in my face, and that changed my life. it makes you take privacy extremely seriously.
Rodden, you have anything to add here?
No, I think I have said enough. I went on many rants already. Come on, don't make me do it again.
Yeah, go on.
But kind of a parting thought for me, at least on this topic, is that given what you know by now, you can try to decipher, try to understand, try to get on my boots as to why I'm so opposed to mass adoption. Because I have said it before in other spaces, in other chats. But I didn't care if I bought Bitcoin back then and it was 1,000 per coin. I wouldn't care if by the time I got to the other side of the border it was 66K instead of 1K, because at that exact time, at those couple days, I didn't think about how many coins I was purchasing or anything else. I just care that by the time I flew to my final destination, I could take what was mine, be it 100K Satoshis or 1,000 Bitcoins, full coins. It's a matter of protecting your capital, of becoming sovereign. It's not a matter of I have however many coins and become as cocky as you can get because you're so rich in USD. It's more like I want to spend the coins right now to get, I don't know, a lollipop. I do it. I want to spend the coins or the sats to buy a house. I do it. It's about making the transaction they don't want you to make, and beyond that, make it in a KYC free fashion. So it's effectively opting out. It just become price agnostic.
And to go back to, you reading those sort of tweet threads off as well, the KYC AML info and data collection that I guess has come out of the woodwork in the last week because of the sort of global affairs that have been going on. These are things that have already been known about in the privacy space. They're already things that we're very familiar with and know that is going on. But to have them spelt out in such clear, plain English, if you like, does sort of hit home as to exactly what you're signing up for when you use one of these services. And you sort of do ask yourself the question, well, if I've sort of KYC'd myself, then where do I go from here? And you've got a few options, but nothing beats sort of, as I think you've said before, Matt. Sell back to the exchange and buy no KYC. You can hold on to your KYC Bitcoin and put it through sort of a Whirlpool coin join, but that doesn't erase the history that where you've purchased it from before. So I don't want to end on like a negative note as such, but it goes back to the what you do today you might regret tomorrow, and you might not be screwing up today, but you could be screwing yourself in the future. So
let's talk about that. Like, okay, so the majority of people listening to this probably have already KYC'd. They have a decent stash of coin that is KYC'd. What can they do to reduce their risk? How do they proceed from here? Is all hope lost?
There was a question relating to what Brother Ravi was talking about with regards to CoinJoin and KYC. If I may bring it up,
Yep.
I'll I'll read it out loud. Somebody on Twitch asked if it touched KYC, consider it at least somewhat tainted, even after CoinJoin. It seems it's more of a comment, but still, just to clarify or to touch on that a little bit briefly. CoinJoin helps your forward-looking privacy, meaning you can acquire some level of annonce with your UTXOs moving forward. But the bottom line, the problem at hand is not the annonce of your UTXOs. The problem at hand is that your identification, your selfie, whatever you provided the exchange with, is off the blockchain. It does not matter how many times you whirlpool those UTXOs, that record is elsewhere, and it's agnostic of what happens on the blockchain. So even if you coin join some KYC UTXOs, you're still fucked. But yeah, that's.
So I mean, I would say first of all, Lion makes a good point in the chat that in the future, as a circular economy develops, it will lessen the pain points to a degree, because most people will not be buying Bitcoin, they'll be earning Bitcoin. Most people will not be selling Bitcoin, they'll be spending Bitcoin. And then all of a sudden in those situations, ideally merchants are using sovereign setups, whether that's something like BTC Pay or SatSail or Paynims, or just mobile wallets without reusing addresses, or like those centralized pain points that are getting regulated and that have all of these surveillance measures attached to them become less important. In the meantime, I would say I'm of the belief that I think there is a decent argument for selling back at the same exchange you came in with. So like you bought in Coinbase, maybe you have a coin, you sell the coin back, and then you go no KYC from that point forward. And if someone thinks you own Bitcoin, I sold the Bitcoin there. And if someone gets those KYC records, they see you bought this much, you sold this much. Now that adds another element in terms of you might have a realized gain, then you're reporting that to the tax authorities. You're doing all this additional you're increasing your data footprint in a lot of ways in that situation. There's no perfect answer. If you coin join early, though, the sooner you coin join, right? So the way these surveillance firms work is it's all a probability analysis game. So like I can send Bitcoin to myself all day. Just generate a new address, send Bitcoin to myself. Brother Rabbit can send Bitcoin to himself. The name of their game is to try and figure out when it actually changes hands. So it's not me sending Bitcoin to myself, it's me sending Bitcoin to Rod and Wheel, or me sending Bitcoin to Brother Rabbit. And they attach a probability to it, and they have tools that automate all of this, but they attach a probability to it. So when you're trying to counteract them, the name of the game is to break their probability analysis. And CoinJoin is a very useful tool for using that. PayJoin is as well. Samurai has that built into their stack. They call it Stowaway on Samurai. They also have these non-coordinated coin joins called Stonewall 2x. You can also do fake Stonewall 2x's, where instead of a second person, you're doing a coin join with just yourself. And on chain, it's hard to tell whether or not it's a coin join with yourself or whether it's a coin join with another person. And you're breaking these probability analysis. So in that scheme, right, the worst thing you can do is you buy KYC and you just hold it on an exchange. The second worst thing you can do is you buy KYC and then you like send it to your ledger or your hardware wallet or whatever, and it just sits there in that same address and never moves, because they're just assuming you did exactly what everyone else did, which is you bought KYC and then you just hold it long term and you're still holding it. There's that middle ground there where you take that KYC coin and you start using CoinJoin, you start practicing privacy best practices going forward. And as the years go by, there's more and more plausible deniability on whether or not you still have that coin. I mean, there's millions of ways. Like the boating accident thing is ridiculous and irresponsible joke, in my opinion. No one's going to fucking believe a boating accident. But the truth of the matter is like, it's really hard to hold on to coin for 5 years. Like you're either spending it, you're losing it, you're getting scammed. There's like lots of different things that could happen. So I'm of the belief that if you are KYC'd and you're not going to go back out through the same KYC exchange, that coin joining sooner rather than later and learning privacy best practices sooner rather than later and deleting your KYC account sooner rather than later. And like, there's no trust that they're actually going to delete your data when you delete it. But if you delete it now and it's 8 years later, it's more likely that it's deleted than if you don't delete it now. And it's more likely that you have plausible deniability if you do the coin join now. So I wouldn't, that's like my positive spin. I know it still doesn't really sound that positive.
Also, it kind of depends if you're a big fish or a small fish, right? If they see that you bought that coin, how much of it did you buy and how much will it be worth in the future? And, maybe if you're talking a massive capital gain, you just need to take the hit to avoid, getting too hot, if you will. But if you only played around on KYC platforms with small amounts, then you're probably fine. I mean, in short, BTC noob, what I would take away from this is once you coin join, from there looking forward, they don't know whose coin is whose coin. They can't follow that from your original stack, but they do know you have acquired that original stack.
Right.
And that's the knowledge that you should be concerned about, depending on if you're a big fish or a small fish and what your threat model is.
They know how much you bought, when you bought it, your withdrawal addresses, and when you coin joined.
Right. So one could speculate that they have software to kind of estimate, what is that coin worth now? Is there a possible capital gain that they should be looking out for, or some kind of, maybe they're trying to monitor you for cashing out, how you spend it. But as long as you coin join, stick to no KYC, you learned your lesson early on, then you'll be fine and you can opt out, escape the system, and enjoy life.
I think it's just draconian. It's just awful, and it happened recently with the elliptic graphs, the GIFs or the images of the hack that they assign a certain UTXO with an identity, and they can even put a picture. Your selfie is attached to that UTXO, so no matter how many hops, your identity is going to be linked for I don't know how many hops in that wallet cluster, say 5 hops, 6 hops. So your face is going to be plastered all over, even if you use it now and that merchant receives it and sends it somewhere for 5 or 6 transactions, it's going to be your face assigned to that specific UTXO. So it's like, what?
I guess what I'm trying to get at is like, I see this a lot. So like the meme in the common meme in like privacy, not just Bitcoin privacy, is the average person saying, I have nothing to hide, so I'm not worried. I do nothing wrong, so I have nothing to hide. But that's not really the common holdup that I've noticed. The common holdup that I've noticed is I'm so fucked that it's worthless for me to try and improve my situation. And I think it's important for people to realize that that's not the case. You can always improve yourself. Now, is it going to be perfect? No, but you can improve yourself and you can make progress, and you should do it for yourself. And at scale, if everyone is trying to improve themselves, it helps everyone together.
And there's no such thing as perfect privacy.
Right.
If you think you're ever going to achieve that, don't even try it. Just find what works for you. And even taking a few small steps, once a month, or try out a new piece of software here and there, it all adds up. And people who say I'm screwed, like, fuck it, just be a nihilist, that's foolish. there are solutions, there are tools, and it's getting made easier every day. It's just a matter of, do you care or not? Or even, have you been made to care yet, right? Because in the West, where we're spoiled with modern banking, or we don't have as much conflict going on with our like internally in our nation, that people haven't been awoken yet. But other people are made to care about this stuff very quickly. And like we've talked about on the show already, it's better to get into this stuff early than it is too late. And it's not a doom and gloom thing. It's really just a matter of, do you want to be in control of your money and your data, or do you want someone else to be in control of that? It's really that simple.
Well said. So guys, we're a little over 2 hours. I really appreciate your time. I think this has been a great conversation. I appreciate you all. I like to end the show with some final thoughts. So with that said, final thoughts, Brother Rabbit.
I think, buy, if where you can, buy no KYC Bitcoin. What you said earlier, Matt, about coin joining as early as possible, just to provide yourself with some forward-looking privacy. If you've got any questions, you're welcome to jump in sort of the Telegram chat, which is where you'll find a lot of people in the sort of Samurai and Ronin Dojo chats that care about their privacy, whether it be interacting on Bitcoin or there's often a lot of people in there that ask about setting up your routers and what phones to use or what apps to use. The community there is sort of second to none. So if someone can't answer a question, they can very often not direct you to a guide or another Telegram group. If you're one of those that's got 1,000 Telegram groups that you're in. But just do the best you can and follow best practices. It's all well sort of shouting about best practices, but actually putting them into place and taking the steps to better your own privacy. And it feels good, really. Once you've taken a few steps, even if it's just to sort of get off Google or start using your own node. Every little step counts, and it gets easier.
Awesome. Thank you, Brother Rabbit. Guerra, final thoughts.
Yeah, mainly just run a node, make every spin to coin join, engrave your seeds in steel, do your own custody. All you freaks are in the right spot. Keep listening to Matt, and in a few simple steps, I think everybody can get off of Google, take control of their own funds, and really not need anybody. Be totally self-sufficient and cut out all the third-party service surveillance bullshit from their lives. And like you guys are saying, it's one step at a time. It doesn't happen overnight, but man, it feels good when you finally delete that Gmail, delete that Google account. It goes from hopeless to hopeful and very quickly.
Thanks, Guerra. Look forward to kicking it with you in Miami. We didn't talk about it earlier, but me and Guerra were kicking it at like 2 a.m. at BitBlock Boom, and that was a great fucking conversation that none of you will ever hear.
Yeah, man, I'm excited.
Rodden, final thoughts.
Well, other than thanks for having me on, thanks for the time and space. Personally, I could speak for myself here. I revived, I resurrected yearly Citadel Dispatch. It was just layback, open mic. I had some alcohol. I spoke my mind, no filters. I appreciate it all, and more of a on topic. Privacy at the end of the day, it's gray. It's not black and white. You don't go from 0 to 100 so quickly. Just keep iterating, keep doing your own research, keep tinkering. That's the most important thing. And keep asking questions whenever it feels like it's required. Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you, Rodden. We'll appreciate you. I'm going to see you in Miami as well, right?
I hope so. I'm still on the fence. I don't know. I'll think about it.
Okay, well, let me know. Hopefully, we'll kick it. If not, then I'm sure we'll kick it again in person soon.
For sure, for sure.
Just huge shout out to our guests, Brother Rabbit, Guero Moneda, Rod and Wheel. Follow them on Twitter. Ronin Dojo Node, t.me/Ronin Dojo Node is their chat. ronindojo.io is their website. I appreciate all these guys, and huge shout out to all the freaks who come back week after week to Dispatch, especially those in our live chat. You guys make this show unique by participating. It is, this is it's Dispatch 58. Like, one of the reasons I started this show is because I felt like there was not enough conversation about important topics, and there was not enough focus on all the great NIMS that we have in this space. A lot of people like video content, and that's one of the reasons why Dispatch is audio only. So it's a privacy friendly playground for good thoughts. But at the end of the day, like, let's be honest. I mean, I just mentioned kicking it with Guerra and Rodden. Consider local meetups, consider in-person conversations, off the record, not recorded. Those are the real value lies. And just keep on trucking and keep on improving. It's all about personal responsibility. Cheers, guys. Thank you. Love your freaks. I hope you found that conversation as enjoyable as I did. I'll see you for Rabbit Hole Recap on Thursday and Dispatch on Tuesday. I'm having Rockstar Dev on for Dispatch on Tuesday. And we're going to talk about privacy, because what else do we fucking talk about on this show? Also, I think probably going to do an in-person Dispatch before the conference in Miami, the Tuesday before the conference in Miami. So stay tuned for details on that. Trying to line up a venue. It should be pretty good. And then, of course, the open source stage is basically going to be Dispatch for the next 3 days after that. Love you all. Stay humble, stack sets.